On today's video, we are debating four of the most
Oh
controversial
boy.
names in fantasy football drafts in 2023.
hmm
Do us a favor, go ahead and drop a like to show the channel some love. Subscribe if you like fantasy football. And before we even get into the video, just pause it right here. Tell me who's the most controversial player in fantasy right now based off of their ADP
Yeah.
average draft position. Who do you think has the most controversy surrounding their names? Now, the way this video is going to work, we put a tweet out. Well, I put a tweet out. Badake retweeted it. We wanted you guys to be a part of the video. We said, who are the four most controversial players via ADP? And what we did is we looked at the responses, and we are now going to go from the most mentioned players down to the least mentioned players. We're going to talk about four of them. So,
Yeah.
Badake, who's the most controversial player according to that tweet?
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, according to our tweet, I think there was 4 to 5 votes for this player, and that is Calvin Ridley for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Current ADP, just to give you some context, because I think that is very important. Wide receiver 15 on Underdog. He's wide receiver 17 on Sleeper, so pretty close to ADP in both platforms. And Zach, are you riding or dying with Calvin Ridley here?
Yeah, am I in or out? I guess
Yeah.
because like we thought about the name title, we were like, oh, ride or die.
Ride or die, in or out. I mean, do you want Calvin Ridley?
We're debating. Am I in at the price? Is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
exactly.
Okay, let me provide just some quick context before I answer because I think it's important for people to understand why I'm so passionate about him. When he got suspended on March 11th, 2022 with the Falcons, his prices plummeted. In Dynasty, he was a wide receiver 62. And then after being traded to the Jags in November of last year, he was still only sitting at wide receiver 48. And Badake would know it. You guys on the Dynasty channel would know it. I was so annoying during that time span because I was consistently saying this is the easiest buy in all of Dynasty football, making multiple videos about it. So since March of 2022, I personally, Badake, have been buying him at every single chance that I get. The reason I'm bringing you guys this context is so you can understand how much investment I truly have. Not only am I just talking about a player, but like the passion is backed when you look at my dynasty leagues, and I want to see him succeed. So I obviously have a little bit of a bias here. So with saying that, yes, I am all in on this price this year. He is actually my wide receiver 13 as I
Oh
currently
boy, it's going up.
record this video. So I'm all in. I am riding or dying with Calvin Ridley. Let me remind you who Calvin Ridley is in case you forgot. In 2020, which was the last season that he was healthy and he wasn't dealing with, the depression, the anxiety, the, all the off-field issues, he was a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy. He averaged 18.8 fantasy points per game. He had 90 receptions, 143 targets, over 1,300 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. In every single one of those categories, he was top 11, and in yards, he was top 4. What's even more impressive when you look at those numbers, guys, is when you take into account his article that he released, his letter on the Player Tribune this offseason, because he told us he was playing on a broken foot that entire year. My guy put up almost 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns, saw 143 targets while playing with a broken foot. In that season, his trainer at the time in Atlanta told him, it's just a bone bruise, you're fine. Everyone got fired from that staff. And then the next staff came in and the trainer said, yeah, your foot's definitely broken. You need to get surgery. What Calvin was doing during that season, he was just taking Toradol shots every game. My guy was just playing through the pain, just not focusing on it, letting the pain medication take his mind off of it. And then in 2021, he obviously has, the issues off field. He only plays 5 games. You can see his 17-game pace, though. He was still on pace to have 105 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 7 touchdowns. But during that 5 games, he was still rehabbing his foot. His foot was not fully healthy. He just wanted to be there for his team. He wasn't ready. His house got robbed. The anxiety, the depression started to take over. I would strongly encourage, if you guys haven't read his Player Tribune article, go read it. It's one of the most impactful pieces of, written content I've seen from a player in a very long time. His story is very inspiring. regardless, the last full season we saw Calvin Ridley, he showed us that he was a true alpha number one wide receiver for a team, and he was being targeted that way. Calvin Ridley, to me, is the missing piece for this Jacksonville Jaguars ascending offense to become a lethal unit. Go back to that season where he was, somewhat healthy in 2020. In 2020, he was first in air yards. He was first in deep targets, and he was 7th in yards per route run. Those three numbers are a reminder of his route running ability and his ability to stretch the field, his ability to be dominant. His red zone targets, he was 2nd. That is a reminder of his efficiency in the red zone. This is important. Hear what I'm saying right now. The Jags were great last year, but they were not good in the red zone. They were 17th in red zone touchdown scoring percentage. They scored a touchdown on 55.4% of their red zone trips. As good as Kirk was last year, he wasn't good out of the slot. He was good in the slot, but as good as he was last year, he is not a red zone specialist. He's never been a red zone specialist. Calvin instantly becomes the number one receiving threat in the red zone instantly in an ascending offense. And then you look at the targets and the dominator rating. That's a reminder that he can demand targets when there's competition around him. He was playing with Julio Jones in 2020 before Julio Jones fell off. Now he's playing with Christian Kirk. No disrespect to Christian Kirk. I think he's a fine wide receiver. I think he's very good. But there are different levels that we're talking about here, in my opinion. And Calvin Ridley is on a different level. So look, in conclusion, when he was healthy, he showed us he's an alpha top 5, top 10 wide receiver. He brings an answer to really the only weaknesses in this Jags offense from what we can see. He's the most versatile player. He's the clear guy who can play outside. I don't have it right in front of me, unfortunately, but if you go look at Christian Kirk trying to play outside the slot, it's not good. He clearly was he is a great slot wide receiver, but that's what he's meant for. And he's connected to an ascending Trevor Lawrence, a team that went from 32nd to 9th in points per game 1 year under Doug Peterson. I'm all in on sleeper and underdog platforms. So yeah, I'm riding with Calvin Ridley this year. How about you?
Yeah, look, it's definitely very interesting. And, wide receiver, wide receiver 12 is big. I mean, that automatically thinks that
13, but yeah.
13. 13. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It puts him over a lot of people that I think I still would take. Look, at my current moment, Calvin Ridley is my wide receiver 18. I'm just outside ADP for sleeper. I'm definitely a little bit lower on Calvin Ridley versus underdog. So it just really depends on where Calvin Ridley falls to me. I am in on Calvin Ridley, the talent. If I'm going via the ADP on underdog, I guess I have to say I'm out. If I'm going to the ADP via sleeper, I'm in because I'm closer to that ADP. When I look at Calvin Ridley and all those things that you bought are viable to why we all love Calvin Ridley, why we believe Calvin Ridley could be this guy, especially Trevor Lawrence. I think we can easily say Trevor Lawrence is going to be ascending coming into this year again to the next level, especially with another year in this offense, another year with Doug Peterson, and now building this rapport with Calvin Ridley that he's having in the offseason. Now, the thing is, it's not that I'm out of Calvin Ridley. I'm in. I just think that sometimes in mock drafts and maybe in your home leagues, you might have to be out on him. So yes, I am in on Calvin Ridley, but if Calvin Ridley is going, sometimes you see him going late second, early third, I think there are question marks. It's like, dang, do I need to take him there? Because he's not over those guys in my rankings, over the Keenan Allens, over the, the multitude of people, maybe Devonta Smith, Chris Olave, T. Higgins type of player coming in right now. And I think that is the biggest question. Where are you comfortable taking Calvin Ridley? And right now I'm comfortable taking him at the middle to end of the third round. That's where my ADP puts him. But I think it all depends on each and every draft that you're going to be in, because people are going to see Calvin Ridley as high as wide receiver 13 like Zach, and then I see him as wide receiver 18, even though I believe he can finish as a top 10 guy. I'm just a little bit more skeptical coming in if it's going to be an even slate, like a cruisy ride. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think underdog is typically ahead of the curve with ADP compared to sleeper. So let's just say wide receiver 15. Are you in or out?
Yeah, if I'm a wide receiver 15, I have to be out, unfortunately.
So tell us why.
It's just purely.
Is it just other names that are available?
It's just other names that are available, and purely where I would draft him. If I'm taking Calvin Ridley at wide receiver 15, I'm looking at taking him over someone like a T. Higgins potentially, depending on where people have him. T. Higgins, Deebo Samuel, Keenan Allen, I guess Amari Cooper, depending on how high people have all these players. And I feel more confident in every single one of those guys over Calvin Ridley at this moment. And to be completely honest with you, I can even see Calvin Ridley ADP rising even higher as we get closer to the season. Hypothetically, I mean, maybe depending on when this video is out, we see Calvin Ridley in the first game of preseason, maybe in a drive, and Trevor Lawrence peppers Calvin Ridley, and his ADP even rises even higher. I think we're going to have to ask our questions to ourselves, which maybe you have already done. Devonta Smith or Calvin Ridley? Chris Olave or Calvin Ridley? Those are big questions that you're going to ask yourself. And I think I'm still going to be leaning with Devonta Smith and Chris Olave coming into the 2023 season. So it's unfortunate.
I hear you. So Calvin Ridley has put up a season of over 18 fantasy points per game. Wasn't even healthy, like we talked about. I mean, broken foot, he did that. I do have Calvin Ridley over Devonta Smith over T. Higgins. And it's very close for me. They're in the same tier. The difference is I don't see Devonta Smith being the number one on his team. I think he'll be 1B, but he won't be a clear one without A.J. Brown being just as good or probably better, right? T. Higgins, he will not be the one. I love T. Higgins. Jamar Chase, when healthy, is the number one wide receiver on that team. T. Higgins, his career high in points per game is under 16. It's 15.7. Devonta Smith's career high in points per game is 15. So when I look at these two offenses and the role that they're both going to play, to me, last year, even myself, I didn't understand how good the Eagles offense was going to be. I think the Jags are this version of the Eagles last year. People don't understand how damn good this offense is truly going to be. The number one weapon on that team, I full-heartedly believe, will be Calvin Ridley. Like I said, there are levels. And what Calvin Ridley has proven throughout his career, through what Christian Kirk, I think we saw his ceiling last year, what he can offer a team. Now it's like building a basketball team. You have different players and they suit each other's strengths, but Calvin, I believe, will. Calvin, to me, even if you guys want to put it on a percentage, I think 70% chance he's the number one on his team. Devonta Smith, no doubt. T. Higgins, that is not above 50%. That's probably around 35% for me. So when I look at the true upside of these two players on very good offenses, all of them, one ascending, others are solidified in Cincinnati and Philly. I would say Calvin Ridley has the best chance to finish the highest, and he's also proven it in his career.
Yeah, and look, it's really hard to argue with that because Calvin Ridley, like you said, wide receiver 4 in that 2020 season, obviously beside Julio Jones in that year, I think when I think of Calvin Ridley, and I know this is a thing that maybe a lot of people don't like to talk about, it's nearly been 2 years since he's played, and I think that is a big. It's not a big worry. But I think that he's going to have to get his legs underneath him. He's going to have to get hit first in a while. And maybe he's not this guy that's going to pick up where he left off. Maybe he doesn't really get that true crazy connection that we hope and expect for Trevor Lawrence maybe until week 6, maybe till week 8. And then by then, does he have the capacity to still get you and finish as a top 10 wide receiver? Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But at this very moment, if I am going versus underdog ADP, I'm going to be passing. If it's sleeper ADP, I'm 100% in because, once again, sleeper ADP, wide receiver 17, my wide receiver 18 currently. So, yeah, I'm currently in on Calvin Ridley on the sleeper platform, but not an underdog.
Would love to know everyone's thoughts on that. I mean, the only thing I would just say is I would agree with you as far as like him being rusty. If that trade happened mid-season and like there wasn't a chance an entire offseason of him building connection, I don't know. I definitely hear people there, but man, he's had an entire offseason. And I almost look at it glass half full instead of glass half empty. For 2 years, he hasn't taken hits. For 2 years, he's been getting healthy, But I hear you. Okay, so I'm in. You're technically out if we're going underdog ADP.
If we're going underdog ADP, I'm technically out, yes.
But sleeper, you're in. Okay, so the second player that had the most mentions in that tweet, that is the most controversial ADP, is Kyle Pitts. ADP in underdog and sleeper, tight end 5 in both of those categories. Badake, I'll start with you. Are you in or out at tight end 5 prices for Kyle Pitts this year?
I am currently out on Kyle Pitts with these prices.
This will be fun then.
And let me tell you the reason why, okay? Kyle Pitts coming in his rookie season, phenomenal year. No doubt about it. He was on. He broke rookie records coming in, and obviously that was with Marcus Mariota coming. Or excuse me, what that was Marcus. That was Matt Ryan that year actually, coming into his rookie season. So he had an MVP caliber type of quarterback. Now he went to Marcus Mariota, and then Desmond Ridder. Obviously, this past year, he did get injured, and he is still dealing with that injury coming back into this season. And we've seen him kind of getting back onto the field and knowing where that's going to be. But at this very moment, I'm out. He is currently my tight end 7 in my rankings. I'm not necessarily sure where you have him. But at this moment, I'm not necessarily sure with the ADP and the prices where we're seeing with Kyle Pitts and who's going around that range. Because if it ranges on mock drafts right now, but if you really look at sleepers underdog or sleepers ADP or underdogs ADP, he kind of ranges between round 6, round 7, really depending on the draft. And when I look at those people that are going around 6 and 7, I'm not necessarily sure if I can pass up on some of those players. And another thing is, I'm not sure Desmond Ridder is going to be throwing the ball 30 to 35 plus times coming into this year. We had to remember the Atlanta Falcons was third in rushing attempts coming into this year, and not coming up last year, excuse me. Not only that, they draft Bijan Robinson, the best running back since Saquon Barkley, and no doubt that is going to continue on the ground. And if in my personal opinion, in the air, I love Desmond Ridder. I think he can have a decent sort of breakout season. Maybe he's a top 15 to 18 quarterback, which I think is decent for Desmond Ridder coming into his full-on, I guess you could say, quote-unquote rookie year, playing a full 17 slate games. I'm not necessarily sure Kyle Pitts is going to be returning that tight end 5 return coming into this year. I love Kyle Pitts, but I'm not necessarily believing in him this year specifically. I see him in the longevity in Dynasty. He's still my tight end 1 in Dynasty. He's one of the most talented tight ends coming out of college in the past decade. Some would say even longer. And I'm not necessarily sure if that is going to be happening this year. Let me tell you some players that are going around round 6, round 7, hypothetically, that I honestly think you can wait on tight ends and still get a better tight end like a David Njoku, like a Pat Frymuth, like an Evan Ingram in those rounds later. I'm seeing Christian Kirk. I'm seeing Deontay Johnson, Elijah Moore, Zay Flowers, Brandon Cook, Jahan Dotson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Tyler Lockett. All these guys are going to be producing, in my opinion, in a consistent manner outside of Kyle Pitts. And once again, I love Kyle Pitts. I don't think he's going to be the guy coming into this year going to be returning a tight end 5 return in 2023. So I am currently out on Kyle Pitts this year.
Okay. So I hear you. All right. So before I say if I'm in or out, I think to me, this is less about rankings and this is much more about what round do I need to take Kyle Pitts? Because honestly, when you look at like tight end, if you're going to put him in the top 5, you either need to have Kittle, Hawkinson, or Waller, I guess Andrews. Like one of those guys aren't in your top 5. That's really hard to stomach in redraft. In Dynasty, it's no problem, but that's very tough to stomach. So he's currently my tight end 6, but I don't think I'm out. It really depends on what round you can get him in.
Right.
If you need to draft him round 5, no way. I'm not taking any tight end in round 5, really, because Kelsey will be gone, Andrews will be gone. But if you can take him in round 7, he's the 7th player that you've drafted, that's a different story. I would be in on round 7 prices. We did a mock draft yesterday. I was like, okay, where did Kyle Pitts go? He went at the 7-10. In that scenario, I'm more than happy to pay 7-10 prices. So I'll say a couple reasons to be in, and then a couple reasons that I'm like, we can't put him too high. Firstly, the dude is 246 pounds and he ran a 4.44. He is the highest tight end ever drafted in the 100+ years of this game. He has an archetype and body type to be a tight end 1 on any season given the right offense. And what he has done in his first 2 years in this league is genuinely remarkable. I see it all the time on Twitter, all the time in chat rooms. Someone says, what has Kyle Pitts even done? He's a bust. The next time someone says that, feel free to give them this timestamp because I'm about to roast their ass.
Oh, boy.
No, just kidding. But let me tell you, because I believe it's impressive. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Since the year 2000, shout out to RotoViz for this information. Since the year 2000, so we're saying, 23 years, Kyle Pitts in his rookie season is one of 4 tight ends to receive 100 targets in their rookie year. He's one of 4 tight ends to have 60-plus receptions in their rookie year. He is one of 1 tight ends in the last 23 years to have 1,000-plus receiving yards. If you look at the entire history of the NFL, he was 50 yards away from breaking the all-time record set by Mike Ditka. Since the year 2000, if we look at his first 2 seasons, he is one of 12 tight ends to average 6 or more targets per game. He was the 6th best in the first 2 seasons of any rookie tight or any young tight end. He's one of 18 tight ends to average 3.5 or more receptions per game. He is one of 11 tight ends to average 50 or more receiving yards. He's the 8th best in that category. Oh, and by the way, he did all of that in an Atlanta offense that ranks 29th and 24th in team yards per game the last 2 seasons combined. So the next time, again, someone says, what has Kyle Pitts even done? What has he even done? Just tell him, you don't know ball, okay? You don't know ball.
Ball's life.
But
here.
Badake is right. There are reasons to be seriously concerned. When I looked it up, you said 3rd. I saw 2nd most rushing attempts per game. I could be wrong.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I was wrong.
But
Actually,
regardless,
second, yes, you're right.
Regardless, they are top 3, right? They also, which I wanted to bring into the equation, is not only were they the 2nd highest rushing team, they were the 2nd fewest passing attempts per game team last year. So only one other team threw the ball less than them. In fact, they ran the ball 10 more times than they passed it every single game on average. It's the same head coach. They just brought in Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, that's hard.
And I don't think that one of 8 billion people on God's green earth knows what Desmond Ridder is going to do. I don't think we know. We can be excited about the prospect. We can be excited about what he did in college.
Agreed.
But none of us really know. He played 4 games last year, threw an interception, or didn't throw an interception, but he only had 2 touchdowns in 4 games. If he's averaging, 0.5 touchdowns a game, this offense will be awful.
Yeah.
And last year in his 4 starts, he averaged 28.8 passing attempts per game. That would have ranked 5th fewest amongst teams in the NFL. So again, for me, it's not so much about rankings, because rankings between tight ends, like, honestly, guys, after Kelsey and Andrews, I genuinely feel like you can rank them however you want.
Yeah.
And that 2nd tier, that 3rd tier is so wide open. To me, it's what round. So if I can get him in round 7 or later, he can be the 7th player on my team. I can have 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, maybe a quarterback at that time. Then I'm in. Right. But outside of that, I can't do earlier than round 7.
Okay, so just before we move on to our next player here, and a little exercise for you in the community. If all these guys are available, Pat Freiermuth, Kyle Pitts.
Oh, easily Kyle Pitts.
Okay. David Njoku, Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts.
Evan Ingram, Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts.
Dallas Goedert, Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts.
Okay. I'm taking Goddard over him. There's a conversation to have Pat Freiermuth over him. I think right now I'm at the moment where I say, okay, is it Kyle Pitts or Evan Ingram? Feel a lot more comfortable with those offenses coming into the 2023 season at this very moment. So, it's interesting.
To me, the question I have is Kyle Pitts or George Kittle, and I'm going George Kittle right now. But yeah, I would take Kyle Pitts over those names. Okay, we didn't realize how much debate we would actually have. So this video series on the fly is going to turn into 2 parts. We will release them, I would say, back-to-back days. This is part 1. It's going to end, but there will be a part 2 tomorrow, where we will talk about the other 2 most controversial names on that list. Do us a favor, go ahead and drop a like to show some love. Subscribe if you like fantasy football, and we will see you guys in the next one where we talk about the 3rd and 4th most controversial players in fantasy this year. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.